All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to slightly sleepy, but still nonetheless fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Welcome to the Thursday edition of Coffee with Cramer and Colleen. I am Don Cramer with Urban Nest Realty. We both make the Cramer Group. Colleen sends her best. She is out in the field. Like I said, we've got a couple of houses and clients. We're working on some buyers and sellers right now, wrapping up. So, like I said, I'm catching up with her a little later today. But she sends her best. You'll be seeing her beautiful smiling face here on some future episodes coming up. But she said, okay, Don, fly solo, but it's an exciting one today. So today we have in the virtual interwebs Rudy Romano. And Rudy is a fellow member at Urban Nest Realty, but he is our go-to for all things commercial and land development. So when we have projects where we're needing customers that need commercial spaces for leases or acquisitions or sales, Rudy is the guy. So Rudy, thanks for joining in today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Don.
Rudy, what's like I said, are you on your second cup of coffee today, or what you running today?
I'm running behind. I'm on my first.
Okay, there you go. Well, thanks for tuning in, Rudy. We were chatting about it. Thanks. It's wonderful. We've been kind of giving people the update of what's going on with the Las Vegas residential market, and market updates. But I think it's important to kind of convey what's going on and kind of give the 411 to people about the commercial side. So thanks for tuning in today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So Rudy, as we were just chatting about, kind of diving in here real quick about, we'll just kind of just dive right in. We were just chatting before we went live about Beltway versus non-Beltway. Could you give the viewers out there a little taste of kind of what's going on? Because that Beltway area, especially what we kind of call the curve, seems to be the hot ticket.
Yeah, so the Las Vegas market kind of looks like a bullseye, and the Beltway runs, as the name depicts, around the entire outskirts of Las Vegas. It allows the residents to travel more freely than trying to take the 95 and the 15, which get heavily congested, at popular times of the day. And then what we were discussing was, how does inventory work in the commercial realm, and how are rates affected? And then what happens is that this Beltway, usually the prices for both for lease or for purchase, they're usually the premium areas compared to the inner portion, because of the ease of access to these properties, and sometimes it can be quite significant, the price difference. And what we were discussing before is that unfortunately we've all seen it. We see all this construction development, rising like the phoenix from the ashes from
Right.
the 10 years ago. We office space, office space is the soft, underbelly of the commercial realm right now, and it has been for a while because we keep building more office space and not consuming the inventory that already exists, which, by the way, is not on the Beltway, right? So
Right.
the
And is
interior.
that kind of across the spectrum? Your kind of Class A, Class B office?
Yeah. So what happens is that you're adding more Class A
Right.
around the Beltway, and what you're doing is that you're making the disparity larger with the existing properties that have a little bit of age to them. I'm not saying necessarily they're physically obsolete, but they'd have to do a lot to compete with Beltway properties that are being built with newer specs and actually being built for not this generation but for the next generation, right? So they're building ahead of the need.
Right. So with regards to that Beltway area, as you
Huh?
mentioned, there's office space, but they seem to kind of like take on sort of a, I want to say, similar vibe. Should we say, kind of those 4 to 6 story buildings right there versus sort of originally, let's call it Hughes Center or some downtown office space. Do you
Yeah.
kind of see
So
that style going, or do you see some continued product changes around there? Or
well, it's in general. We're seeing smaller tenants coming in. So
okay,
when it comes to spec build, you're going to see, um, You're going to see some smaller buildings. The the uh, the market right now, like I said, for office, if you see it going up, it's probably because they already have a tenant in mind, right? And that is the inventory issue, which is everyone's doing build to suit or for single individual use, and so they're basically tailoring those buildings specifically for that tenant or that owner right for that very moment. It's not necessarily for out for investment. You're not going to see like a Regis come in, build a 20,000 square foot office building, and then go lease it up. They're buying the existing buildings from back in the day when we had the market the recession there. So, but yeah, right now what you're seeing is a little bit smaller product. You're not going to see much of the bigger stuff.
Right.
And like AAA investment is actually a little bit on the decline. So right now, what they're trying to do, you'll see that you've seen this in the last couple of years with apartment complexes. We didn't have any A-rated properties until about 3 years ago, and then all of a sudden in 2018 we had 6 projects to start the year.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you look at these, especially like you said, Beltway specific.
Yeah.
The rise of these Elysian properties.
Yeah. And so what happens is that the same thing happens in with the office spaces. What happened with apartments, which is you had people that were buying C properties, they were making them A properties, and B properties. If you needed to put a little bit of money into them to make them an A, okay, but a lot of times they ended up getting pushed to being the C. So then you see the market flip. You're seeing some of that with some of the office space as well, but it's a trend that's not as easily noticed because obviously you see those apartment complexes going in with 300 doors or 350 doors, and they're quite sizable compared to what we're dealing with on the commercial side. But if you drive up and down, especially in the Southwest, where that's still the hotbed for growth for both office and industrial and in retail, all 3 segments, you'll start to see that. So.
Well, and that kind of brings up the next question too, because as you know as well as I do, it's great to see the space around the Beltway there being developed, but that land is limited, and you had a little note here I kind of wanted to dive into a little more is about keeping land prices in check, and why don't you kind of give us a little feel about that sort of maybe across the valley wide?
Sure. So I'm not sure if you knew, but my background, I used to be the corporate controller for a lot of the local builders here
Right.
before joining the Nest. Did a lot of the land deals, did a lot of their forecasting. And so what happens is that when the market was 10 years ago, when the market was completely decimated, the price of land went down to $1. Didn't matter what it was $1. Okay. I know of some projects down at Lake Las Vegas that the banks actually had negative appraisals on the properties, if you could believe it. And I know the appraisal agents that did those. So it was unbelievable. But really, price of everybody's land went down to the price of $1, right? And then what happened was everything started to come back, and there was a little bit of a free for all for a sense. And then what happens is that we're landlocked here in Las Vegas. All the property around us, we see all the desert, and we go, man, why can't you just build a little bit further out? Well, the state doesn't own it. It's not privately owned. That's owned by the Fed. It's BLM property. And you have to go to auction. It's got to come up. And so we're landlocked. So residential development really kind of drives a lot of people will say commercial drives the land prices. I don't see it that way. It's the residential in my mind. And what happens is that in this town especially, and what happens is that right now we don't have any real 20-acre contiguous pieces that any of the builders would want to go and develop on. So it drives the prices way up if you've got an assemblage that you could put together that's worth anything for any developer. And obviously they would like to go higher density, but in the areas where these properties are available, they're in low density areas like the Northwest, like Durango and the 95 out in the Northwest. That's all like 2 to 3 to the acre. You try to do a higher density single family entry level property, you're not going to do it. But all the money is in the move up and in the estate. And as you know, that's what you see driving a lot of your new home prices is there is no entry level property. So what happens is that based upon people's earning abilities here in town and what they can be approved for is kind of get downward pressure onto land prices. And so, when I do a land deal, I go, well, I can sell the house for $500,000. I have to build my margin in, my bricks and sticks are here, and this is what I can afford for the land.
Right.
And so as long as the we're not seeing double-digit increases in new home sales prices, you're not going to be seeing double-digit increases in land prices, and so you're going to see that downward pressure, and ultimately, everybody wants to get their piece of the pie. So the land guys will push against the land guys will end up pushing it against the guys that do the bricks and sticks and so forth. So, but generally that's been somewhat stable because of housing prices not being in those double-digit increases each year for the last couple of years. So, which is a nice thing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is these guys.
This situation with COVID, probably the economy should hopefully keep land prices in a little bit of check, even though we have some scarcity issues.
Well, you got to remember, everything is based on supply and demand, right? So just because you have supply, if the demand goes away, you get a problem. But I think that in the resale market, we talked about numbers the other day. Yeah, you've been affected, but could it have been a hell of a lot worse? Sure. But on the new construction side, if you can't bring in tradesmen and you can't bring in all of your employees and you've got a national company, right now, Vegas market is the market that most of the builders use when they need to make their number at the end of the year. Okay. And I'm a Toll Brothers, Poli, Lennar,
kind of cross the finish.
They always lean on us for those numbers. So the thing here is, if you can't go and bring in your 200 or 300 employees into an office, you're not going to be building 200 homes in the course of the month. So, because you need that staff, you need those people that are inside with you, getting the stuff done. They can't all work from home. So that market, hopefully they get back to business quickly. I mean, I have a couple of clients that are with new builders. I'd like to get it all moving along. But the new home market, I think, has been hit harder with the COVID than the resale market. If you've got a nice clean property, especially if it's vacant, you have no problem getting that one to go. I know my investors; those are the ones that they go after.
Yep.
But new home construction, man, has been I don't want to say decimated, but has came to a screeching halt very quickly.
And that's where we're seeing, and certainly, as you know too, I mean, that's where we're seeing the incentives.
Yeah.
And like you said, supply and demand issue. And if anyone out there too today is tuning into today's broadcast, or even if they're watching the replay, if you have a question for Rudy about commercial development, put it in the comment section. We'll get those over to Rudy and get an answer back to you.
And Don, one more thing on the new construction.
Mm-hmm.
Being that a lot of the builders here in town are national, and they're all trying to they all want to make their end of year number.
Yep.
This is the time of year that they put out all those big incentives in the first place. So here's my forecast. You're not just going to see the normal summer sale. You're going to see the super summer sale for this summer to go and make their number to catch up for the 2 months that they've been down, plus to make up for other parts of the country that may be harder hit than Vegas.
Okay. All right. Because Vegas sort of, like you said, kind of flies the flag for new home sales.
We don't have the labor issues. Typically, we don't have the labor issues, and especially the weather issues that other markets will have.
Right.
We don't have to worry about temperature for pouring concrete out here like maybe in New York, and we're obviously much drier. So whenever they have a problem, they'll come out this way looking for the Vegas market to make up the number nationally. And like I said, if they need those numbers, I mean, you've seen it with banking where they've taken their overlays off, and they're doing stated income, right? And you've seen a couple of stated income at the end of the year to make the number, right? They only need their 3 or 4 to make the number. You're going to find that you're going to see some pretty good deals, I think, for new home construction in the next couple of weeks when they finally figure out if they're going to be opening their doors or if they're going to be still shuttered.
Gotcha. Well, that's good. That's a good way to know. I mean, let's. I'll be honest. I mean, it's like you said. It's a market. It's timing. It's like some back in the day. When do you buy a television? Well, some people said Black Friday. I learned over time. I know this is a little off topic. You buy it during the football playoffs. It wasn't Black Friday. I'm like, really? You go, well, no. Everyone wants a television for the football playoffs. They're changing model years.
Right.
There you go.
No, you're right. You're right.
So moving on to industrial. We've seen. I've been seeing a lot of industrial underway. I mean, certainly we've got some of the, we got mega projects, and that's kind of blown away some industrial. I was up by Craig and 15, where the exclusive Shadow Creek was, and when it was built, it was an island unto itself. I'm watching pads being poured. What's going on in the industrial space?
Okay, so industrial, especially small industrial, that's like the new retail, right? Because of the internet.
Yeah.
So you're seeing, a natural progression from, and the same thing happens with big box stores, retail stores as well. You're seeing them going away, and you're going to see them going more towards retail because they're doing more online work. So that's number one. So business is somewhat shifting. You're seeing a lot of building, and you're seeing them build way in front of the need, and they're building that for the current generation spec. They're building for the next generation. So if clear heights are 20, or right now standard, let's say, are 26 feet, they're building 30, 32. They're providing all of the top features that are not necessarily requirements for today, but are believed to be the features for tomorrow, right? So they're building very smartly to make sure that they're not physically obsolete the day that they open their doors. And so that market is thriving. The problem with that market is, because I get this all the time, Rudy, I need a warehouse. I need a 20,000 square foot warehouse, and I need it over in the Lake Mead, Summerlin area. It's like, that's great. What do you need it zoned? C1, C2. Great. I'll talk to you some other time, because that's not the zoning.
Right.
Not C1, C2, M1, M2. Sorry. The problem with our market is for industrial, though, is if you need M1, M2, you're going to be right along the 15 corridor. You're not going to see, and it makes sense because it's it's a main thoroughfare. However, being that we do have the 95, we do have the Beltway. That's why you see those projects that are out that way, out in the north, because they're right at that interchange. They're getting very close to that interchange there between the 215 and the 15. But right now we have a zoning issue, and then when the market was bad, residential development cannibalized large industrial space, especially out in the North Las Vegas side, and they converted them. So now you have a problem with you got like a pumpkin tooth, a sawtooth action, where you're going to have an industrial community, and it's butts up right up to the commercial, right up to the industrial, and so they have to find a way to rebuffer that because the municipalities were doing everything they could to go and keep business moving, and they said, we will put to the wayside and we will overlook zoning changes. We'll go to maybe a little bit to the extreme. So we got to work our way out of some of those issues. But yes, you're seeing a lot of industrial development. You're seeing a lot of big stuff.
Right.
If you go down towards Cadence down in Henderson, a lot of big stuff down there, Black Mountain area.
Yep.
And a lot of people want to be right along the 15, but a lot of people are willing to go down to that Henderson area. They've driven already a couple hundred miles. Driving another 20 isn't a lot to be able to get the piece of property that they want. So you're starting to see some very large projects being built, and they're being very smartly built as well.
Well, and that's also leads towards some of that the new highway development between Phoenix and Las Vegas.
Yep.
Too. So do you see a continued push there to help support that traffic coming in?
Yeah, it's what's really funny is IKEA actually IKEA coming to Vegas actually helped make us or help establish this market as an inland distribution center.
Really?
Um,
Okay.
so that it's always been an issue, which is why would you stop in Vegas,
Right.
right? Why would you stop? And so um, IKEA coming in, and that's one of the criteria for IKEA is if you look where they're at, they're in major hubs, they're
Yeah.
major hub areas for the most part. That's where they try to be. And so when they came here, that was kind of a signal that maybe this is an up and coming, inland distribution area. So I would expect to see more of those type of projects, and I think it's a good sign. You know, a lot of people want to talk about Apex,
Yep.
but IKEA I think is the real key here. IKEA coming into town, based upon their buying criteria, they wouldn't have done it if they didn't think that we were going to be an inland stop. So
No, it's a very interesting way. You know, it's interesting how there are certain signs, and you're picking up on IKEA and saying, well, that leads to okay, now we're not really a pass through or a truck stop anymore. We're a distribution node.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it really took a lot of people by surprise when IKEA broke ground. Not because they were upset, just be like, whoa, hey man, this is a sign, and that's one of the things that the industrial guys they will talk about, especially back when it was happening. IKEA uh, was the big eye opener,
Right.
not Musk and Apex and that deal. That deal uh, 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 was kind of hyped up more than what it needed to be, especially at the time. But the IKEA one is one that was the most telling.
Interesting. Interesting. So, about let's. I want to dig in a couple seconds about Apex. You know, Apex has been talked about for what since I've been here,
Forever,
which late '80s.
forever, yeah.
You know what you know it always gets talked about. Reno has sort of a big you know, they're kind of like the Reno Fallon area. They built a big industrial complex. Tesla's
Yeah.
now out there with their battery factory. How does, you know, when does Apex take off, or what are the factors or characteristics we need for Apex to be our answer?
Great question. So, like I talked about with Henderson, people are willing to go and drive a little bit further to get to what they need, right? To make sure they have the right property, right?
Right.
Because right now, there's no reason why anybody. Same thing with residential. It doesn't matter where you are in this market. There's no need to compromise, right? You will find it. Apex. The biggest issue with Apex is just getting the services there. The development itself is is very large,
Mm-hmm.
and very complicated. And unfortunately, you got to have a higher demand and a higher guarantee to go into that area for anyone to have to go and work out a deal to go and bring all those services in. So it's not as easy as just dealing. Hey man, I'm going to go deal with a landlord. I'm going to deal with the property owner. Just do it. There's a lot of services that are just not out there, and it's very expensive to pull all those utilities and services through, and which is probably the biggest deterrent. Plus, you have to deal with all the municipalities. You got to deal the number of powers that you have to deal with to get something done. It's not like dealing with something here within the greater Las Vegas area. So yeah, but that's the big issue is just getting all the services there.
So we still have we have the space. We still need a heavy lift in infrastructure, utilities.
You still need all that infrastructure, and that was back in the day when the Musk deal was announced for Tesla out that way. That was the issue, which is, who's going to pay for all this, right? And not just who's going to pay for it, are you going to guarantee it? And we all know Musk is sometimes erratic, right?
Slightly.
I mean, he was just in the news last week, right, saying sell everything, right?
Sell everything, but his house is a FISBO.
Yeah. No, but the point though is that there's so much in the way of guarantees that are needed.
Yep.
If you're dealing with somebody who you don't know if they're 100% in, because today it's hot and sexy, tomorrow it's not, and they can pull a plug. does the state want to get involved in doing a lot of this work on a deal that someone could be as fickle as, a gazillionaire that just wants to screw it? So it's kind of funny that guys with money, you would think that those are the ones that you want, but sometimes those are the ones that have the least incentive to complete what they're doing.
Yeah, and we had a bit of a concern there too. There was the other electric car company, Faraday.
Yep.
They were trying to build that project. I mean, the good news is up in Reno, the the Gigafactory there is definitely underway, and it, as you can see, you mentioned the ever controversial Elon was even discussing, moving out of Fremont because of the factory not being able to open and redistributing production out to Nevada and or Texas.
Right.
And so,
but like I said, that area. Unfortunately, you can't just have one big name coming in. You've got to have multiple to be able to make it worth anybody's while. And it's such a large project. If you don't have us on the map as the place to be, you're just not going to get the demand for that spot, and it's not going to pencil. So, and that's the biggest problem. Like I said, it's a very large project, and eventually everything's going to get there, but it's not going to be there in my estimation really anytime soon. It's not going to be completely blow the doors off you as the next stop that everyone's going to be. It's not going to be like the Southwest market where which has been hot for the last 10 years. It's just not going to be that way.
Well, and I would look at it too. I mean, so we've talked about Apex. I mean, that's up 15. It's still a little bit removed from the city lights a bit. What about the potential towards south? I mean, there's always talk about you talked about distribution, about the freight airport that was going to be like at Ivanpah, such. What about a southern expansion?
So now you're dealing with the BLM again. So you remember we got that constraint.
Got to swap some land.
Yeah. So in the Southwest, about 5 years ago, what they were doing was they were actually lifting. And it was actually a little bit longer than that. They were actually lifting the flight path overlays that prevented a lot of the building along the Durango curve in that Southwest corridor along the 215.
Yep.
So if you went and you looked at one of the Lanzacor maps, you would have seen that there was a whole section that going right from that Durango curve down to the airport that really was unpopulated. It looked like it would be a nice prime spot. It was because of those overlays. So they started lifting those, and they started to allow people to start bidding on those properties to go and go vertical, especially for residential. Mm-hmm. So in the Southwest, that's the biggest problem, though, is that you got to go and you have to do all the surveys and all that before you can go and nominate the property, right. and it's a lot of risk. So you got to really have a real good and well-funded project to want to be able to go and put that out there, because it goes to auction. If you nominate the piece, there you go. And the same thing happened with these parcels that have these overlays. But you're going to see that before you go any further, they're going to want you to go and eat up all those properties along that beltway before the BLM will start opening up anything that goes out further. So anything else along that 15 is a little difficult, just because of who we're dealing with. It's not a regular landowner that we're dealing with. We're dealing with the Fed.
Right, which the United States federal government owns. What is the number, like 85+% of Nevada?
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is that the parcel sizes, once you start going more rural, they start to get much larger. And the question is, what are you going to use that property for, right? So I always get people sit there and say, well, let's subdivide it. I'm like, great. So you're going to go buy a 200-acre piece. Mm-hmm. You're going to break it down to 5-acre pieces. That's great. Where are you going to find all these other people to take all the excess?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. And then since you put it that way, it's like, well, yeah, just put a little thought into it, and that's why it's not going to go. You're going to see us going more north and more east than what you'll see going south, in my estimation. Just down to 15.
North and east versus south. That's
where you'll go to the Southwest, but you won't go south. You won't go straight south down the 15. You'll see Southern Highlands side, more on the interior, but you're not going to see much along the 15 south for a while, I don't think.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. And kind of back before we wrap up here on design and office. So retail, you're sort of stayed thinking that we're going to probably be a little flat here for a bit.
Yeah. So, um, you know, retail acclimated, and rates just skyrocketed in about 4 or 5 years ago. Just absolutely skyrocketed. Sometimes doubling within 6 months. Okay, and that's flattened out. Most of these centers, the tenant base is stable. Most of their financing is under control,
Mm-hmm.
right? They don't have giant ticking time bombs with balloon payments that are due.
Right.
Um, and they've reworked out everything in current terms with their tenants, so that they're working from the new basis. And so now you're seeing things, I think, flatten out. Uh, there is there's always still a need in retail. However, now the biggest problem in retail is the big box locations. You got a 40,000 square vacant grocery store. You got Toys R Us. You got what do you do? And we've seen this down at Meadows Mall, right? When those
Those are a
stores
good
went out. I
example.
mean, how
Yep.
many decades were those stores out before they actually figure out what they're doing? And if you take a look at like the Boulevard, um, and what they're doing down there, where they're completely making it a entertainment center, that's kind of like the new trend when you're seeing some of these large projects in retail like that. But retail market in general is pretty stable, um, and it's great because uh, the retail market was so decimated. It's good to see that you have shopping centers and people are not surprised saying, where'd they go or who is that? When people go to a center, they know what shopping they're doing. And they're not concerned about, hey, man, my favorite place to go get bread or coffee is no longer there. So I think that's been a big plus, not just, obviously for those property owners, but just in general for the market, knowing that you have stable retail. I think it adds to a good psyche among consumers.
No, exactly. Especially as we start coming out of this. We were having some discussions the other day. I mean, there's some retail spaces, for better or worse. Not to name names, but just in looking at it, there's some that are almost in a constant state of restart, even though they're beautiful places with great access. Let's say like Tivoli, for example. I
Yeah,
mean, there's a lot of Class A, and there's a lot of nice offices, law firms, investment firm. That second floor stuff be kind of built out. You've got that beautiful R&H, but food and beverage has been a challenge there.
yeah, and for what reason we don't know, right?
Right.
Because there's always good establishments that are there. It's just they just can't find the sticking power. Um,
Right.
and the other thing that you're hitting on here is like identity, right? You got the Tivoli, right? It's got a very distinct a personality to it, right? Um, right now, what you're not seeing is that when the market was horrendous, we would throw anybody we could into the spot in retail, right?
Yeah,
And
you
so
had a
property,
warm
yeah,
body open up a retail spot, right?
yeah. So I'll just do something just to go and keep the lights on, right?
Yep.
So the identity of the property would be bastardized in a sense, right? So like I've got a property right now that I'm trying to rehab in a sense. I have a gym, I had a modeling studio, I had an attorney, I had an esthetician, a CPA, and a speech pathologist. It's what's the identity of this property, right? I mean,
It's
is
like
it
the United
medical?
Nations.
Is it retail? Is it office? What is it?
Right.
And so what happens is that the identity of the properties, it's more solid out there as a market. You don't see many like that rehab job that I have, to straighten out a tenant base. But like I said, like I said, you know where you're going, and it just further bolsters the prices. And the reason why things are flat is because people are signing up. They're better tenants. They're signing up longer term and locking in because they're convinced that their business is going to thrive in the future. So that's a good thing.
No, that's terrific. And you talked about, the space you're working on rehabbing with all these different things, and I think that kind of gets into, and we talked about Tivoli, it's a distinct look.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about the urban design and planning.
Yeah.
If we look at the great cities,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever been to Barcelona. Barcelona's got Las Ramblas, which is one of
Okay.
the great pedestrian streets for miles, shops and all that type of stuff. Las Vegas, we've tried to, there's been the reboot of downtown a bit, a downtown
Yeah.
project and such. How, and I'm also seeing things like in, some redevelopment of Main Street, Arts District. How do you see that kind of playing out in that more central core area?
Yeah. So right now, the market trend is that, especially here in Vegas, when we talked about being landlocked, uh, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to talk about. We have to do infill, right? When we live in this valley, right? But that's what you're referring to. Is a
Yep.
lot of these are really older neighborhoods, the older part of town. What do we do to maximize not just our profits, right? But how do we make it like aesthetically pleasing to the eye as well? And so what you're seeing is like what you'd see in a lot of like in LA, whatever, you'll see like a lot of development where they're going to be bringing the parking, no more street parking, right? They'll bring parking in, they'll go more vertical. You'll see a lot more boulevards. It'll be more bike paths, and this is this type of stuff that you see downtown. And I think that's going to be more of a trend. I think even downtown Summerlin, they've started to get into that mindset. Years ago they really wanted to be high density.
Yep.
If you can believe it. They used to actually give builders rebates 20 years ago to build the build the smallest house possible on the smallest piece of property. It was just crazy. But I think that's not just a trend that you're seeing in other markets. It's a trend that you're going to start seeing here. And I think that people are going to actually appreciate it. Now, we've had some swings and misses.
Right.
That and we're trying to redevelop it. So like the work live aspect.
Yes.
The one that I point out is Centennial Village out in the Northwest. That was a project of mine when I was at Lennar, and it was a project again of mine when I was at Rhodes and Harmony. But the work live, we've tried it. It works very well in other markets.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem to work very well here. However, doing more vertical high-rise projects, interior parking garage, including in even on the commercial side, seems to be more of the way to go. And I think that we'll see more of that when it comes to design changes that are noticeable design changes for the valley, as opposed to doing more of that work-live type of project. I don't think that you're going to see more Gramercies.
You're right. So it's like a Gramercy or something where it's like, okay, I've got my condo or my townhome, and I can just walk right down the street to my yoga studio.
You're going to have them, but they're not going to be as prevalent as seeing more of a high-rise building with the parking. You're not going to see the work with people who are going to want to still. They're either working from home,
mm-hmm.
right? Or they, but that product type has been tried in this town for several decades. Market being good, market being bad, and unfortunately, in our recent history, the only time that property type actually translates is when the market's down and there's inventory issues. So, that's not necessarily what I would. Encourage one of my investors to go look for, which is a down market project. But but it's it's funny because when I at Lennar, I punted the deal after we put in our first 11, after we trenched our first 11 homes, and then a couple of years later when we started Harmony Homes in 2008, 2009, we said let's jump on that one because hey man, it's 277 home sites plus all this some commercial build out with the brown zones and all that.
Right.
Hey man, you're not gonna be able to get it. This is an opportunity. You may not be able to get this one later, and we repackage it and put it out. But like I said, I would never encourage anyone to go in and do a down market investment unless you're already in that down market. But I don't think that you're going to see another Gramercy be built, or no less be built in a large scale fashion much in the future here, unless attitudes seriously change.
Well, and I guess that's a good question because we've talked about density, and now with COVID impacting, there's been a lot of discussion and saying, okay, New York City, the eastern seaboard coast, where it's been most impacted, it's a much greater density of population.
Yep.
Than let's say out here. Will we be seeing COVID impacting land planning and distribution more, or planning and design more so in commercial here, or do you think that that's going to run up against just our pure raw land numbers? And it's going.
That's a great question. So
forces.
Asian markets have high density buildings, right? And absolutely. They will. They've been able to, and they've been very, very conscious of social distancing, masks before COVID. And
they very much leaned in, very, very proactive.
Yeah. So I don't see COVID having that negative of a COVID or anything else like COVID in the future, or the risk of a COVID-like, reoccurrence, or what have you. I don't see that having a major impact on that building type going forward, a high-rise, mid-rise type property. Because if it did, that means that anything that involves an elevator would be obsolete, right? So we know that won't happen, but. I think that we will be taking our cues from some of these other markets outside of the U.S. on how do they handle. They have high density, and they may be a little bit more self-conscious of infectious disease as well. I think that we're going to take our cues, and it'll be more of a worldly response to it. When it comes down to businesses themselves, I mean, I shaved my head as a joke with my kids, right? So, because I sat there and said, even though they're opening up, I needed a haircut, and I don't believe in the magic shower curtain between barber chairs.
Right.
Okay, so I said, by the time, if we don't have a relapse and my hair grows in, then I'll go get my hair cut professionally as opposed to do it, just shave the head. But I think that you're going to see differences in the casinos.
Right.
I mean, I think that's where you're going to see the big business difference. And I know we've all seen those memes on Facebook and all, which says just wash your damn hands, right?
Right.
I mean, I think that you're going to see more emphasis now put on make sure you're Purelling and you're using all the antibacterial stuff, and maybe we'll stop getting maybe we'll get away. I know I've already seen people getting away from prior to this handshakes, the fist bump or but it's not as yeah, like I said, it's not as much. If sit there say I don't shake hands, you did that 10 years ago. All of a sudden, people look at you like, "What's wrong?" You do that today, people are like, "Okay, I get it." So it's more socially accepted. So, but I just think that like in the casinos, in this town we have to figure it out, and large businesses like that will have to figure it out, because I think what's the stat for every room? There's like 10. It creates like 10 jobs. There's something crazy. The ratio.
Yeah, the primary to secondary economic impact is huge.
Yeah, and so I've heard some people say, well, just open up every other room on the floor. It's like, well, you realize you just cut how many jobs then if you believe that stat is true, if you're going to cut the number of rooms in Vegas in half.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think that you're going to see a lot of those big open businesses. The Dave & Buster's of the world. I thought it was funny that some of these places were opening up bowling alleys. I don't understand why bowling alleys would be on the first tier being opened, but I get it. But I think that that you'll see business be operated a little bit more conscientiously regarding social distancing. And if someone appears sick, I think you're going to see a little bit of a knee jerk where people are going to be like, "Nope, you're gone." I don't think that I think that the cameras for taking temperatures will be a norm.
Yep.
You wouldn't even know that they're there. I mean, that's you can't be offended if you didn't know what was happening, I guess. But that's I don't think that you're going to see much in the way of construction change or product type. It's just the way that we use it.
The operations of the property. I mean,
Yeah.
It's like after 9/11, we didn't bulldoze down our airports.
No, and we didn't stop building planes either. So it's like it's no, exactly right. But we changed the whole process of how we handle air traffic and everything else that was part of the issue that happened. Right. So we're going to handle that exactly the same way. Unfortunately, this is just something that you can't see, right? It's the intangible. It's tangible, but we can't see it, right? And I think that's the hardest thing for people, which is are we overdoing it? Are we not overdoing it? But I think we all would agree changing building type would be a giant knee jerk as opposed to, hey, how do we clean these things? We may see them taking out, for example, it's funny. There's always an argument over paper towels versus the hairdryer.
Yep.
You're going to see differences. If you go to California Pizza Kitchen over by the T-Mobile Center, they've got the sinks outside the bathroom. Yes, wash your hands before you go in. Wash your hands when you come out. And by the way, everyone that sees you come out of that bathroom knows that if you wash those hands, you're going to see stuff like that be more prevalent, I think, in the future, though, when it comes to construction.
So we might see some modest design changes.
Yeah, but that's not anything
seeing in resident. I see a big shift in design changes in residential from needs. We'll see how big that gets impacted. And so, kind of probably wrapping up too. We've got the mega projects. I mean, we were flying the banner for the last couple of years, saying $10 billion in new construction. We were working on the convention center expansion, Hyperloop. The old Fontainebleau is trying to get restarted. You've got Resorts World, our big flagship, the Allegiant Stadium, and other projects. What about do you see those mega projects kind of still coming forward? And do we see other mega projects here in Vegas or developments that kind of shine a light to our future?
Well, first off, like all those projects, they're still moving forward right now, and they're trying to find a way to complete their jobs, right? Yeah. So I think that says something, right? Because you get these jobs, it's very easy to go and pull a plug on all the funding and say, we're gone and stop now, right?
That was like downtown Summerlin. I remember when they pulled the plug.
Yeah.
There was curbing, and then the steel structure for Summerlin 1.
Yeah. You had the steel girders you saw from the 215 for years,
right?
And so we understand how to pull a plug on a large deal here in Vegas. So we're not afraid of pulling one. I mean, so that's never a threat. To say that we're too big to fail. No, we'll pull the plug. I mean, again, when it goes back to the comment earlier that I made about like Elon Musk, you're dealing with these trillionaire type of guys. In the grand scheme of things, it's somebody else's money half the time that they're using, and they'll pull a plug in a heartbeat because it's just not what their heart's into. That's not going to be the case here. They're going to keep marching these things through, and we're going to have to figure out how to go and operate them. You're going to see a lot more when it comes to sporting events where they are going to have to figure out how to go and seat you, right? Baseball is looking to has toyed with the idea of keeping everybody in place and just play out in Arizona and Florida suspended. We'll figure it out, but you still need those. You still need those arenas. You still need those large venues to get by, and you're still going to have concerts. You're still going to have all that stuff, but we just need to make sure that we are doing this in the right fashion going forward. But yeah, I don't see this being a market correction indicator for us. It's just a blip in 2020 is basically what it's going to end up being.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen any signs yet where we said, okay, this mega project, we're going to go to a screeching halt. So, what's Resorts Worlds now, that tower's still going up. The original, the predecessor, Echelon, that was a plug pull.
Listen, trust me, they had plenty of offers, to go and resurrect that deal. Nope, not doing it. Nope, not doing it. Nope. And I mean, there was always an offer in the wings. So, like I said, it's if they wanted to pull the plugs, they could have. If the casinos wanted to pull plugs on their employees, they could have. They didn't. They stood by their employees. So I think that all the indicators are we're going to get back to business. The question is really, in your crystal ball or my crystal ball, how fast, right? Because, like I said, for me, I've got people that most of my people are from out of town, so I don't have to deal necessarily what's going on here, but I also have to deal with what's going on in Denver, what's going on in New York, what's going on in Florida right now. So, because that's what they are going through. Thank God I don't have anybody in Georgia, but the point is that but my point is that I think that business-wise, we're going to be more sensitive to not just what happens here, but we deal with a lot of people that are out of town. We're going to have to be more sensitive to what are they coming from, and what are they dealing with, because it is a little it's a stressful side. With home sales, sometimes the most stressful thing that people do, and then to have to deal with this on top just makes it even more.
It's a life decision.
Yeah.
It's one of the 5 or 10 big life things you do.
Yeah.
And like you said, investments in a lot of cases, a lot of businesses. I mean that the life of that business, the deciding to develop, not develop, operate. Those are its life decisions.
Yeah, I'm really hoping. I'm getting the calls in the last 2 weeks have picked up. Last week I had 3 collection agencies call looking for leasing space, which is not a good sign, or is it a bad sign? I don't know. So, but they look at it this way: you got people that owe money, but they don't start collection companies unless they think that they're making money to collect. So, but and that's a true story, by the way. I had 3 in one day call asking on spots. It was really weird.
Yeah.
But no, the phone calls are picking up in the commercial realm. I know there are a lot of agents, just like a lot of residential guys and gals, they didn't see a hiccup, which is great. But on the commercial side, if I can't get people in to go and take a look at properties, they were all shuttered. We don't usually use lock boxes.
Right.
But we've resorted to put lock boxes on our buildings and advertising them, just like you guys advertise, vacant, come see me. We do the same thing. Yeah. So as soon as this was coming down, I put all lock boxes on my building, and I had to tell all my clients, because I do everything by appointment.
Yep.
I had to explain to them that, I could show it, but if I'm there, it may actually detract from actually getting the property shown, and had to go and explain, hey, this may be the most beneficial to you not having me there as opposed to be there, because we'll just do more things like we do right now. We do it with Skype, we do it with
exactly
with our online meetings, phone calls, what have you, and we do all of our homework up front. And actually, since I do a lot of my business by a distance anyway, I'm usually going out and getting the survey reports and all that ahead of time, so I can sit down with the client. So a lot, business-wise in general, my practices aren't going to change in the new COVID world. But business itself, if businesses are shut, no one's looking to move. So, but like I said, for me, practices, the way that I've run my business hasn't been interrupted, other than is the phone calls hot or are they cold today? So, so I've been lucky in that respect.
Well, that's great, and like you said, because you're dealing with a lot of investors and client base that's abroad or outside of Vegas, it's still business as usual for you, because your practice and systems are business as usual.
Right.
And they were set up for such a situation. Rudy, anything else we want to shout out to anybody with regards to commercial, just kind of about Vegas and such?
Well, the one thing I just want to say, I just want to thank the commercial agents for the last couple of weeks. Okay, uh, commercial agents, when we don't have inventory, we go on vacation because answering the phone is a liability, right? Because I can't do anything if I don't have inventory. The one thing I can say is that as a whole, the commercial market, all the guys and gals, and I make a lot of phone calls. I live on the phone.
Right.
They've been really good with making sure that they're answering their calls. And you just listen. I see what happens in the office when I can't believe I can't get a call back from that agent. I may have to go to the bro. I can honestly tell you that and I've got some people that I roll my eyes. I go, oh, I got to call them, and they've actually been real good with, hey man, we got to find a way. What are you doing to work through this?
Right.
What do you we share our notes and we try to come up with our in a very social way. We're just trying to come up with best practices so that, hey man, we all want to make a buck.
Right.
We all want to be safe. And how do we be efficient? And I think that this has actually been I always look for silver linings. The silver lining here is people learn how to answer their phones again, and
That's great. Exactly.
and email. Yeah. And a lot of the guys in my realm, you look at large shopping centers, their listings are usually horrendous because they never take anything that's off market. And now that they're home and now that they're not doing anything, all their listings are cleaned up. Yeah. So for me, information's gotten a lot more reliable as well in the last 6 weeks. So that's like I said, I think overall we'll do well as long as we just make sure that we're all being sensible and safe. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, like you said, it's not just, the agents, the group, especially even on the commercial side, are trying to pull in the same direction versus going to corners.
Yeah.
And move this along because, as we're trying to do even in the residential side, I mean, we're here to facilitate, things for our clients. And if we can get, like I said, through Zoom, Skype, whatnot, digital transactions, if that's going to be the new norm for a little while, so be it. But it's great that good that you had a shout out to fellow commercial agents on trying to facilitate solutions.
Yeah, no. What's really funny though is the 2 weeks prior to our shutdown, mm-hmm. I swear every agent was in California trying to go and like bring everybody in, do their trips, get everything done.
Right.
The 2 weeks before were hell, I'll tell you that. But once the shutdown hit, everybody's answering their phones, everyone's making sure that everything is up to date. But yeah, it's a true story. The 2 weeks before, I couldn't get a hold of anybody. They were all out of town, and it was hilarious because it was like, dude, I'm trying to get something done because we know it's coming.
We know it's coming. I need to get my trip in now.
Yeah. Hey, listen, my wife took the kids. Our baseball tournament in Arizona was canceled the day. Okay, and then they decided to go to Disney on the last day before they closed it.
Oh my!
Which in the rain. Okay. And they said it was the best thing that they ever did because no one was there. So it was like, hey, you got to get your last licks in. So
absolutely, it's kind of like the last hurrah.
Yeah. So like I said, and it was probably a good thing too because the cabin fever is already in. But yeah, like I said, it's I think everybody did their part in the commercial realm to to make sure that things move pretty smoothly and hopefully that they don't forget. When the market comes back and we go back to normal, that the practices they instilled in their business in the last 6 weeks remain for the remainder of the year and going forward. So
yes, yeah. Let's hope this is a carry on of spirit well beyond COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, Rudy, I appreciate it very much. I know you and we chat a lot and kind of talking about the numbers. Commercial real estate, and I know normally this has been very informative. I think we've got a lot of information out there for people on the commercial side because we don't talk quite so much about that online.
Right.
So I think it was important to bring that up. So thank you for tuning in, and I'd love to maybe as we move a little further along into the summer and as things start opening back up, maybe if we see if you see some changes, love to have you back.
Hey, listen, I really do appreciate you having me, and I'd love to be back. Love to be able to report how we finished the year strong.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks, Rudy, very much. And if you have questions about commercial real estate and such, we'll get Rudy involved. In fact, we just had one last night. Sent him an email, and we've got a possible client looking for some space for their business. So the commercial real estate, just like residential, is moving along, and Rudy's our man on the street, or our is as they might say in the spy business, our man in Havana. Well, in the commercial real estate market, our man in Vegas.
Don, I appreciate it, and obviously I'll get back to you hopefully today with some information for that client.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in today to the Thursday edition of Coffee with Cramer and Colleen. On behalf of Colleen Schaefer, I'm Don Cramer with the Cramer Group at Urban Nest Realty. Again, Rudy, thanks for joining in. Thanks for also being a part of the Nest. It's great to have a great resource like yourself under our same brokerage. And on tomorrow's show, we are going to, it's actually a taped show we're going to pop out there. It's going to be just kind of a full April market recap as to what happened in the Vegas housing market. So if you have any questions about real estate, like I said, on the commercial side for Rudy, or if you have questions about on the residential side with buying, selling, or investing, unless you want to go buy a bunch of apartment buildings, we'll bring Rudy back in. But if we want some onesies, twosies, or maybe even threesies, Colleen and I are here for you, because more now than ever, your real estate experience matters, whether it's residential or commercial. It just doesn't matter. Yeah. So, again, we thanks everyone for tuning in to Coffee with Cramer and Colleen Live. Till next time, have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks.